Morning. Thank you for joining the January 9th VOLTHA TST call. So the agenda items for today are that we want to go over the remaining tasks in order to tag version 1.2. So we did manage to close sprint 4. And then we'll also talk about the items that remained from that were incomplete, including the documentation and a path forward to get that completed as well. We'll go over at a high level the sprint schedule for version 1.3. So we can start planning that initial sprint and scoping material into it. And related to that, we'll do a review of some items on the backlog. And then I do want to leave some time for Sean to give a presentation as product owner or lead some discussion about the path forward for resolution of a few of the edge core issues. And a reminder to everyone that we are recording the meeting, and this will be posted to the VOLTHA playlist later on. So questions before we get started today? Okay, then first off, let's go take a look at, or start the discussion on 1.2. So we did close sprint 4, and the remaining items, mainly adapter issues here, were moved to the first sprint for 1.3, and we'll see where those end up. So we do need to figure out, and we can talk about this later, on these adapter issues on what needs to happen for the transition of ownership for them, or who's going to pick up the work, since I believe we no longer have the CalSoft resources available. So that is something that we should take a look at. And then also into the backlog. This one I probably should move to the backlog as well. I can look at that afterwards. But we do have the release notes are still incomplete at this point. So I put those to the top of the backlog for right now. And if I could just give a gentle reminder to folks that we'll want to get those updated as quickly as possible after we tag the release. So here we have a list of the subtasks, and a lot of them are actually still in the to-do state. There may be work ongoing, they just have not been moved into in progress. But those are the remaining issues we have right now. So if we go back to talking about 1.2, so we did get the 577, the ONU Reg ID support in. So that did make it into 1.2. So now the next thing we need to do is go ahead and create the branch or tag 1.2. And I wanted to talk with the group about what remains to get that done. We also have in there, and I don't know if David joined. Let me expand the list here.
Yeah, David will be late by 30 minutes today.
Okay, so we may have to sync up with him afterwards. We did have the one item on the AutoZaps to make sure that those are bumped up to the correct version that we want to use with 1.2. I believe we froze those back in early December, so hopefully nothing has changed and we're good to go, but we do want confirmation on that. So we can circle back to that after David joins the call. So we have that item, and then the release notes that's documentation afterwards. But Kim, I know you are on. Do you think we can go ahead and talk about next steps in order to tag 1.2, or do we need to wait for David?
Yeah, I think maybe David's input is key that for Vol 590, because that the mechanics of creating the branch, the 1.2 branch, can be created now since we know the commit is going to branch from.
Yeah.
But on that branch is a little bit of work there that's captured in Vol 590, which is, to change the
yes,
the manifest files and not manifest, but configurations for what AutoZaps the VOLTHA pulls in to make sure it pulls in from release versions rather than snapshot versions. And I just kind of captured here what was done in 1.1 just as I think there's even a reference there that kind of showed a
There
little
is.
bit, because that was somewhat involved because we didn't quite know how to do it back then, but now there's a little bit more knowledge of how to do it. And the word is it might be a little bit easier to release AutoZaps now. There might, I think there was some type of semi-automated procedure, but I don't know the details of that. David would have to speak to that.
Okay. So we'll go ahead then and wait for David, but hopefully we'll be able to get that done fairly soon. But the good news is that we were able to get the Reg ID into 1.2, and that was the primary reason for extending the sprint so that we could get that covered and into an official release for 1.2. Okay, so let me go ahead then, and we'll circle back to this once David joins, and then we'll go over right now to look at the sprint schedule for 1.2. So first, hopefully you're seeing the PowerPoint slide that I have up here with the draft timeline that we have for the 1.x and the 2.0 milestones. And so here in April, excuse me one moment. You do see the 1.3, the target here is roughly mid-April. So I have this on another slide with the dates as well. And then 2.0 then would be following in mid to late July. So the sprints we have leading up to 1.3, you can see we have the planning session. There is included in this time is the lockdown we have this week that Sean has coordinated. And then also some time allocated for developing and inputting epics and user stories into JIRA to support the work that's required in the following sprints. So then we'd have 3 working sprints effectively for developing the new features, and then a final hardening sprint, which would be sprint 4, leading up to 1.3. And then after that, we'd have continued sprints working on 2.0. So that's a high-level snapshot. And then if I switch over now to this sprint schedule. So we've got the planning stage that I just spoke about briefly. And so that's really this week and next week. So we've got the lockdown the next couple of days for planning and deep dives into some of the topics. And then through the end of next week to generate the epics and user stories that are required in JIRA. Then the first sprint for this would be kicked off on the 22nd of January, and each of these sprints right now is targeted for 3 weeks. So we've got the first sprint for 3 weeks, starting in a couple of weeks, and then we've got the second one that carries us through the rest of February, and then the third one takes us through mid to late March, and then that final hardening sprint where really we're focusing on testing and fixing defects that were found in earlier stages of these sprints, and then also working on that documentation to get release notes prepped and ready to go for 1.3, for the 1.3 release. So this is just a high-level snapshot of the timeline that we'll be working for in order to meet the date that was on, or the target date that was on that earlier slide that I showed. So are there any questions at a high level about this rough plan that we have here? Okay, I am not hearing anything. So I know yes, Sean.
And Julie, I think, I'm sure you're probably going to address that later. So but at the end of the sprint, each module owner, I think we want to have more active demonstration at the end of each sprint. So
yes, so we're bringing in lots of new functionality this time around. So we'll be wanting to use some of our time for demos. So my initial thought on that was we're trying to reserve the Thursdays this week for technical discussions. I thought there could also be an opportunity to use the Thursdays for demonstrations if we don't have deep dive topics for that particular week. We could also do it on the Tuesdays, but that may be another thing that we could do on the Thursday calls. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so as we've got sprints wrapped up with key functionality developed, we do want to have module owners involved in doing some demonstrations of the work that was developed.
Yeah, I think we have almost done like a 6 month now for the Jira and review and all the VOLTHA 1.0 releases. I think probably later on a lot of the Jira discussion I think can be more, I would hope will be more mature, and people maybe exchange ideas through the Exploder than on the phone discuss unless necessary. Yeah. So I think architecture framework and demo will be the focus on the TST calls. I think that's the way I see it. If the members and Scrum Masters, if there's a different opinion, please, chime in. But maybe it's too early to talk about that right now. But I think I think it will be a healthier and more knowledge exchange meetings than just reviewing the Jira tickets. So.
Agreed. We've been in defect resolution mode for quite a while here. And so this is now a big shift back to new functionality development. And I think that makes sense. What your comments, I think that makes sense. Other questions from the group? Okay, and I know we'll be talking about this later this week, but just a reminder that the primary feature set for VOLTHA 1.3 right now is looking at that migration from Docker Swarm to Kubernetes, and then also what is involved in order to support OpenOM CI. And we've got framework discussions that have been initiated. We'll have more talk about that this week during the lockdown and so forth. And on the Kubernetes side, much of this is already started in terms of entry into Jira epics and perhaps some user stories there as well. So that, yes, there's an epic there and a number of user stories. So that has already started to be input into the system, and we will want to take a look at that also. So let me switch back now to the agenda and just do a little bit of some review on the backlog. So let me get back to the screen. Okay. So right now, the only items that I've placed in Sprint 1 are the ones that have carried over from Sprint 4 for 1.2. And so we do need to start looking over the next week, or I guess through next week, as we start planning that scope, in particular having the module owners look at which of these user stories, if I use the Kubernetes for an example, let me scroll down here. So we've got a number of user stories, which are the ones that need to be placed in Sprint 1 and can be, have a likely completion within that 3-week sprint, for example. So we want to start taking a look at that and then pulling those from the backlog into Sprint 1. And so I do need the help of module owners on getting that preliminary scope for 1.3 Sprint 1 expanded a bit. And we can, of course, talk about that more this week as well. So again, Kubernetes support, we do have this block of stories in there right now. Also, I moved up Vol 531 into the same general area in the backlog so that those are grouped together. And then aside from these top two, which are, we've got the release note documentation issue that hopefully everyone is working on and will be able to close out shortly. Then we also have this final item related to releasing 1.2. So those two I expect will complete fairly soon. And then everything below that we have ordered by priority. First, everything that was tagged for 1.3. And so there is quite a bit that is currently slotted for 1.3. We need to see which of those can make it into this release, in addition to the functionality that we're bringing in with Kubernetes and then OpenOM CI, because those are our primary focus. But you can see as I scroll down that we have quite a few other issues right now that are slotted for 1.3. So we'll need to assess that again as we're going over the planning for 1.3 and see what's realistic to bring in. And then below that, you see the items for 2.0. So those are again ordered, grouped by priority at least, not necessarily item by item prioritization at this point, but at least we've got the highest priorities all grouped together and so forth. And so if everyone can take a look at items that they have been involved in opening or are related to a module they're working on, and see if there are gaps, see if there are items that do not look properly placed for target release, then we can bring that forward for discussion. And then we do also have VOLTHA Future, so ones that have been tagged for looking at up the road, but we're not there quite yet. And then a number below that at this point have no designation. They're just open issues. And you can see many of these are, we've got some that have been around for quite a while. For example, some of the early tickets, and actually many of these are some of the earlier tickets. And so we need to make sure that these are still valid issues in some cases, and there aren't stale issues that are still lingering open in the backlog. So if you could take a look to ones that you've been involved in on either opening them or working on them or working in that functional area, that would be greatly appreciated, so we can make sure that we have an up-to-date list and just do some basic cleanup here where appropriate. So that was really all I wanted to go over on a high-level discussion for the backlog. I didn't want to go into any detailed review today, but just to let everyone know it has been reorganized based on release and or target release and priority. And we do want to start getting that just kind of review to make sure everyone's in sync on how everything is structured and the target releases. Then I think we still have probably about 10 minutes or so before David can be here. So Sean, I think if you're ready, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for the discussion you wanted to have related to some of the issues on Edge Core. All right, I will go ahead and give you presenting rights. And when your screen is ready, actually let me know and I'll give you rights.
I have too many things on my screen. Okay. Show my screen. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, maybe the best way to do it is go through the agenda a little bit, because I put this time slot agenda together, so without anybody's without requesting anybody to provide input. So I hope the time allocated, I guess the people, the community still have almost 24 hours to provide any input regarding to the order and the content of the proposed agenda. I think it's a pretty comprehensive one. Some of the detailed item may not be, even though that will be part of the features, but is not slotted into these next 2 days. But if we have any extra times, then we probably can squeeze any discussion we would like to have on the fly, especially lesson learned on the 1.1 and 1.2. So tomorrow morning we're going to talk about the new features for VOLTHA 1.3. I put 2 hours for the OpenOMCI, and we already have two very two proposals which are very complement with each other. So I think that was, it was reviewed last week, and we're going to spend 2 more hours on that. And the Kubernetes support is slotted for 1 hour. Ken, I'm actually hoping the Kubernetes will be less than 1 hour. So,
yeah, I think it will be, because that's the whole point behind Kubernetes. It's really to have this pretty much the same capability as what we have in Docker Swarm mode, and maybe a little bit more stability. That will be what it will be. So I don't think there will be a lot of discussion there.
Right, but I think a lot of the challenges and the issues we experience with the Swarm, and I would suggest community members, if you remember those, bring those issues up during the discussion. I think at least we will make sure the module for when the Kubernetes is developed would not be those issues will be addressed. I guess I don't. So the rest of the agenda is for the 2.0 discuss on the second half of the first day, and then the whole, mostly the first half and a half of the second half of the second day. One thing I do want to mention is the GDAFast. This is the first time we're going to introduce the GDAFast into the VOLTHA support. I think the idea is for the GDAFast, we're going to have the topic here and people at open discussion, and then I don't think the framework or architecture will be firmed up during this 2 hours on Thursday, but we definitely would like to have follow up on the call proposals. I would very much like the community to start working on that. So so when we put this together, that's before I receive a list of the lesson learned during the AT&T POC 3. AT&T POC 3 has, for people who are not aware about this, is we ask each participant to bring a PGA-based OOT using VOLTHA, and then also the Edge Core OCP OOT using VOLTHA management to control and manage it during the POC 3 period. The final result, we see a big gap between the FPGA-based OOT versus the OCP-based OOT. So the list coming back from after the POC 3 activity, there's a whole list of the gap between the OOT of the OCP OOT and the FPGA-based OOT, and so the Austin lab and AT&T would like to see some of the critical feature to be bridged, and using some of the 1.3 timeframe to bridge the gap. So bring up the performance of the OCP OOT to almost the level of the FPGA-based OOT. I wouldn't say that will be completely the same level, but there are some very obvious issues we need to address, and we would like AT&T would like to see those issues to be addressed earlier, such as delete services, delete ONT, and provision ONT with any serial number we are hoping to assign to, and then the multicast. So I do have this list I can share with the community later, but I think it's mostly trying to address what the non-Maple-based OOT can achieve, but the Maple-based OOT cannot achieve right now. So any questions so far? I know these are the huge list, and some of the list it's already have the user story entered, but as a request from the AT&T, we will also, in addition to the OpenOMCI and the Kubernetes support, we would like to bring this this set of feature also in the 1.3 release time frame. I think we all experience, for example, if you reboot the VOLTHA, then the OOT adapter tends to be hosed up, and also that there's no clustering support for the edge core OOT today. And I believe we are not able to see the loss of signal alarm coming out of, even though I do believe BIOS support those, but we still don't see the alarm coming up into the Kafka bus. So I would like to have this list. Maybe I'll just send out this list to you today. And sometimes, if some of them, if my recollection is wrong, you said those actually is working, maybe let me know. But so this is the potential list we would like to also put into the VOLTHA 1.3. Any comment on this one? Omkar is from Austin Lab. Is that is my statement here pretty much with the goal from the Austin Lab there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And we just wanted to prioritize these and see if we can get them added to the 1.3, like Sean said.
Kim?
Yeah. Question I had is, what was the time frame of some of the things that are showing up on the list? Because I think at some point in the past, some of this stuff obviously wasn't there or wasn't working, but had since been addressed. So is this observation from October timeframe, December timeframe?
I think yeah, October, and then some of the lessons learned from Atlanta. So I would say probably it's 1.1 release. Yeah.
Well, especially the comment about Atlanta. I don't know. Does everybody have the the list of observations, or it has bugs or anything like that been related back to the community on that? Because it seems like I'm not quite aware that there's been any being communicated. So
Omkar, will be able to go to contact Atlanta Foundry and see whether they have a list?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, and like you, I don't have that list either.
I would just like to add comments. I would imagine that they would have a similar list, almost if not similar, because they use the same VOLTHA version that we used in our testing for phase 3. And I am not aware of any contributions related to these issues being put in for their setup. So they would probably must have encountered the same issues we have seen. But yeah, I'll check with them and make sure that this list is updated.
But Ken, if you say with VOLTHA 1.2, some of these has been addressed, I think that actually will be a great input.
Yes, I think the key thing is a little bit more, almost kind of a bug report rather than just a highlighted line. For example, ONT reboot, remote reboot enable. There was maybe some partial support, or LOS. I think there was a demonstration of LOS, the signaling coming up to the Kafka bus. I think that was some people have seen that, but I don't know exactly what AT&T has seen on that. So just basically what is acceptance criteria and or really the rationale behind the observation a little bit. So there hasn't been high interaction, I think, between, you know, the community members that I know of and AT&T on this.
Yeah, I think this is I actually say, you know, we probably put this list together based on the original test plan. So potentially a loss of signal, I seems to remember also is supported. It's the is the signal degradation portion is not. So if this is supported, then I do believe, as I said, this list may be bigger than what actually it is. So I have not done a good job on cleaning up this list, but so we can definitely have a review of this list and see whether some of that has been addressed. But again, so that is on top of the OpenOMCI and the Kubernetes, but it most likely, mostly is I think there is another one is multi-PON support within the VOLTHA framework. I think that part, probably not just limited to the edge core OOT, probably everybody. So that are potentially additional issues will be need to be added in 1.3.
Yeah.
Julie, is that what I committed to do today?
I believe it is. And so I'm going to put on my little Scrum Master hat here again and just remind folks that I think the top priorities still are, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's your product owner, but top priorities are still the agreed content, which is supporting building the framework and supporting OpenOMCI, and then also the migration to Kubernetes. And then my thought here is that if people take a look at this list, and as long as we're not pulling resources away from our ability to complete the committed work, if we have resources that could be applied to this as well, I think that would be great. But I think we need everyone to go back and take a look at the time frame for 1.3 and the amount of work once we get some scope around the user stories and everything for the agreed work, and see if there are additional resources that can be put towards this. I don't want to fail to deliver the others because we're adding too much in, is all I'm saying. But I'm optimistic that this could be covered because it may not be competing resources for some of this work.
Okay.
And any thoughts from the rest of the folks on the call, from the rest of the community?
It's Manuel here from DT. So I agree. Those issues look very relevant here. So I agree with your recommendation, Julie.
Okay, thank you.
Manuel, are you in the United States already?
Yeah, I'm already here in the ONF office right now already.
Oh, you should have told me. Okay, good. Okay. So I'm looking forward to see you tomorrow. And we also have representatives this week from the Turkish telecom. So I think it will be great. Thanks.
Okay, Sean, if you don't mind, I will go ahead and take presenting rights back.
Please do.
Okay, I do see that David joined the call, so I wanted to circle back to our first topic we were starting to discuss, which was what we need to do in order to get 1.2 tagged and wrap that up. So I believe, let me go back to our list here. We had one item that we wanted to discuss primarily with you, David, and that was related to the versions of the AutoZaps and the work that needs to be done there to make sure everything's lined up and we can get everything ready to go. I think we froze those back in December in prep for the 1.2 release. I'm not sure if the situation has changed since then.
Yeah, I still need to go evaluate them and see if they've changed. Okay. I don't know if I don't remember any code changes since then. So they may not need to be version incremented since we've done anything. I'll have to just go back and verify. If they have been modified, we will have to increment the versions and release them, and then update the dependency.xml file so that the VOLTHA release will pull in the right versions.
Okay. So Kim, are you? Yes, you're still on. Is there anything else we needed to specifically discuss with David?
No, I think hopefully if it turns out to be that simple, then we can just, once the branch is created, we can just, like, presuming the best case, there's no AutoZaps changes, then we can just, change the dependencies and all of the rest of the things just to match exactly what was on the 1.1 branch, just pulling those over, and that essentially takes them off of a snapshot and just locks them back to the 1.1. So in the easiest case, that would be the easiest case, but there does need to be an audit to look to see if anything has changed since, pretty much we, from the point that we consider them to be frozen.
Okay. And David and Kim, I know you two have kind of had to deal with the bulk of this in the past. And so I know we're relying on you heavily for this as well. Do you need involvement from some other people in the community for 1.2? Do you need any assistance with this one?
We may need people with permission to create branches and tags.
Okay.
Would be the only thing. Kim, I don't know what your access permissions are right now. I'm going to try to catch up with Jono today. He was traveling yesterday. He talked about he had done some automation around releasing applications, bonus applications. So I just want to touch base with him after I do the audit if we do need to upgrade things, see if any of his automation work could benefit from us.
Okay.
But if we need anybody, it'd be Luca to move things along, or Andy to help create tags or branches.
Okay.
Yeah, in the AutoZaps especially, yeah. I'm like you, David. I think we don't have those permissions to do that, so we have to rely on Luca or somebody to help out with that.
And David and Kim, we would like to actually see additional people can help on this, so we don't fall these on just two of you. So what would be the best way to introduce new assistants to you guys, or backup?
I can create, when I start doing the audit, I can create a meeting, a Zoom session, if you will, and we can walk through what my process is for the audit. And then based on that, we could walk through, what we have to do version changing. And that would probably be the best way to do it, easiest way to do it, is have some kind of partnering, second set of eyes, if you will.
Okay.
On what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, Sean, I think it's a matter of getting another volunteer. I think at the beginning of this, when volunteers were asked for, everybody stepped backwards, and me and David were standing out there. So one more person that could bring to it would kind of help the load a little bit, and especially if they could be on a different time zone, that might help as well to overlap some things. So I think one of the things, David had a good point. Yeah, we can have a meeting to do that, but for somebody to throw their hat in the ring and help out with this, I think would spread the load a little bit.
I'm pinging Omkar here from AT&T. So David, when you're ready to do that, I don't want to, get it, but I think maybe put it online and then also record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Omkar, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm fairly new to this, so it might take me some time to catch up. But I hope David and Kim can help me with that, and I'll give it a try.
You're assuming we know what we're doing. We're just making guesses. So.
And potentially, I'm going to also invite Atlanta Foundry guy. They are very familiar with this, so I'm going to see whether I can get some additional help, at least from AT&T side, to do this.
I mean, longer term, we need to figure out how to separate VOLTHA as a separate repo, so that we have people within our project with the proper permissions, that we don't have to rely back on Luca or Andy to create the things, right? This is a separate project, needs a separate permissions tree.
Okay, so AT&T will provide additional help to you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. That'd be good.
There will be a learning curve, so
completely understand.
And I would encourage other companies as well. I think it'd be great if we could have, perhaps even one person from the various different involved companies who could all help pinch hit if needed. I know there's a learning curve for folks who haven't done it before, but I think it'd be great if we can spread the work a bit more for doing the branching and doing the releases. And then David, I think it's great if you and Kim can do some things that are recorded and that can be used by other folks up the road for future releases. I know 1.2 we're really pretty much relying on you, or sorry, 1.2. So I was like 1.3, 1.2. We're still really relying heavily on both of you, but hopefully maybe by 1.3 we can have some more backup and support from other areas of the community. And Omkar, thank you for stepping up for that also.
Was that David or Kim was saying maybe someone in different time zone? Are we looking for maybe European involvement on this one? I'm sorry. I'm looking at Manuel. I'm blinking my eye, through the through my.
No, I see that. Now I see that. Yes. So I would be interested in support, definitely. So now you put me on spot now. Actually, I'm truly interested in helping, assisting on this, but I probably need, as said before, I probably need to bank on some others to onboard me a little bit with this. So if you find a way to do this, then I'd be happy to help out.
And David, would you mind? I don't want to make this such a big task for everybody, but maybe once you and Kim are ready, maybe send an invite to the VOLTHA Discussed or something like that. And please don't use Snapchat. Because I remember the first time when you tried to do something, I cannot just Google Meet, not Snapchat, the Google Meet Me or whatever.
Slack.
Okay.
Slack,
I'll record it with Zoom or something.
Or AT&T. If a schedule and time, I can host that meeting if you want.
We'll figure that. We'll figure out that logistics. Not a problem. But it probably means if I got to schedule a meeting, it probably won't happen until after the lock-in, because I'm not going to really time to schedule a meeting and give people advance notice till after the lock-in then.
So does it mean we were not able to cut 1.2 until after the?
Right. So if you want it scheduled, it sounds like that's likely the case. If you want Kim and David to work on it as they're available and time permits, there may be more likelihood, and then I think it would have to be an on-the-fly. When they're doing something, they could send out a notice, and anyone who's free at that minute could join.
Okay, that'll be great. Just
we'll do it on the fly, and
on the fly,
almost like a Facebook Live session.
Yeah, or if there's any way you can just remember always record it, that would be great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think having the recording would probably be useful for folks who are trying to get up to speed. Okay, So David and Kim, anything else you need from me or from Sean at this point? So David, I think you had not joined yet when I did mention we did close sprint 4, so we're ready to go. So the Reg ID issue did get in, so that one is closed, and I went ahead and I closed the sprint.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Then.
So
go ahead,
Julie. Well, yeah. So what I was going to say that it's clear now where the branch point is, and that's a lot of the battle right there. We're going to branch at that commit. That's going to be where the 1.2 branch will start. So at least it'll kind of be locked right at that point. And then the work that we're talking about as extra stuff is getting the VOLTHA locked down on that branch as far as the AutoZaps and what version it says it is and that kind of stuff. So and so that'll be kind of the subject of what we'll try to collaborate on and get that documented or recorded or whatever.
Great. Okay, I think probably we're about done for today, so let me just go back to let's see, here it is. This slide with what we had, I just want to put this up at the screen one more time. So we're kind of looking for during this week with the lockdown, and then next week getting the epics and user stories into JIRA, and then pulling the ones that we need in Sprint 1 into Sprint 1. And then Sprint 1 will kick off on the 22nd of this month. And again, we're looking at 3-week sprints for each one, with the 4th one focused on being a hardening sprint and then getting release notes ready to go as well. Okay, I think that's it for today's meeting. Just the reminder to everyone as well, if you are working on 1.2 release notes, please make sure you continue to get that updated so that we can get that closed out as well once we have the release ready to go, and we're getting close.
Hey Julie, just one thing on those release notes. Is there a clear place that this release note link is? It's a Google Doc one, so I'm not sure. Maybe I've seen people using 2 different links or something. And, but that might just be me. So, because I didn't.
If there are 2 different ones being used, then we may have a problem.
Where is the official link for this? If you could remind everybody.
So Sean, I thought it was the one that was off of Wiki. Is that not correct?
There's under the below. There's a draft. That's the one.
That's the one to start with. Okay. All right.
So this is the one I thought folks were using. So if there's another one in progress as well, let me know so we can try and merge that in.
Okay. All right. I will.
Thank you for bringing that up.
That's a conflict, but just so everybody knows where that link is. Okay, it's right here. Okay, thanks for that.
Yep. All right. Anything else from the group for today? Okay, I think that is it. I do want to remind people that this Thursday we will not be having this call because we have the face-to-face meeting here in San Ramon. And so this is our only VOLTHA TST call this week, and then next Tuesday we will resume our meetings as well. But no call this Thursday, and obviously no. Sean, are we going to have any Wednesday calls moving forward regularly? Those had been reserved for adapter previously. I think we were trying to roll everything into a single call in any case for those rather than separate VOLTHA and adapter calls.
I don't believe we need to have a separate call now.
Okay. So I think at this point we're looking at just the Tuesdays and the Thursdays, and then of course this week there's no Thursday call. All right, I think that's it. Last call for comments or questions before I stop the recording and drop the bridge.
Anybody have any question about direction or logistic for the San Ramon location? Okay, bring your umbrella. We have some rain here.
Hopefully it will clear up by tomorrow. right.
Today. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. I'll stop the recording.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.